Bum 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 ba da da.
Because we need to break the ice somehow, I would like to ask everybody watching this at home one question. If you are by yourself, just write down your answer, and if you are with someone else, bring them over and make them listen to the question. Let's try your deduction skills. Where do you think I come from? If you said France, you were right. But if you didn't, you were right as well. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ricardo Arevalo, and I was born in Venezuela. But hold on, because I hold 3 passports. The Venezuelan one, the French one, and also the Spanish one. So technically and legally, I am Venezuelan, French, and Spanish. Don't worry, Immigration New Zealand already knows about this. If I had $1 for every time that someone here in New Zealand has asked me if I'm French, I wouldn't be a millionaire, but I will definitely have like $87 on my bank account or something like that. But stay tuned, people, because back home in Venezuela, I don't look Venezuelan either. The theme of TEDxYouth TeAro this year is Seeds of Growth. And for myself, personally, made me think about how I've always felt like in the middle of a pine forest and I was a cactus. I felt different when I was back home, and I felt different when I arrived here to New Zealand. However, accepting those differences is what made me grow and be the plant that I am right now. And speaking about plants, I'm going to show you what it takes to grow and nurture a plant. The first step of germination is sowing the seeds. The seeds are going to grow according to the characteristics of the soil. So let me speak a little bit about my soil. Venezuela is a country with 30 million people located in the north of South America. Depending on who you ask, Venezuela is either the most beautiful country in the world, full of oil, 8 times winner of Miss Universe, or the country with the highest hyperinflation in the world. The country with one of the deepest economical crises of all times, and the country that has said goodbye to 5 million people in 5 years. Back home, the majority of people have brown skin, muscly bodies, and ridiculously shiny smiles. Really attractive people. Not my case, of course. Here in New Zealand, I'm really short, but back home I was probably one of the tallest in my class. My skin was really white and my nose was really big. So in Venezuela, the physical differences may have been obvious. Now imagine the cultural ones. My dad is Spanish and my mom is Venezuelan. My grandma from my dad's side is Spanish, and my grandparents from my mom's side are Italian and French. And you won't believe this, but my uncle met a New Zealander and they moved here together like 3 years ago. So yes, I have a Kiwi auntie. My dad is a big fan of rock, so he introduced me to the rock of the 80s. While my friends were listening to Daddy Yankee, I was listening to AC/DC. Mom is probably the best cook in the world, so while my friends were eating typical Venezuelan food, I will be eating European food. While my friends will go to football classes in the afternoons, my Spanish grandma will try to get me into the guitar, and my French grandma will try to get me into French. Probably for any of you that doesn't sound too abnormal, but back home it is, especially when you're a teenager and you have that necessity of fitting into the group. Another weird thing about me is that my parents encouraged me to read instead of spending too much time in front of the TV. None of my friends liked to read, but I became a book addict just because of my family. I will have conversations with my mom like this. Mom, is Hogwarts a real country? And my mom will be like, no son, that it's all invented by the author. And then those conversations became into something like, Mom, have you ever thought that all the sailors in the boat of Moby Dick represent all the religions in the world fighting against a single enemy which can be seen as God? And my mom will be like, yeah, for sure, yeah, just go away, I'm playing Candy Crush. When I discovered Wikipedia, it was like a dream for me. I would be always reading articles and sharing useless information with everybody. I remember that on a date back home, the girl said that I was really cool, but she felt that she was dating a science teacher. I would say I was different to the people around me, but that was not necessarily bad. Knowing a little bit of everything gave me the opportunity to start conversations with almost anybody, and that gave me what you would call a silver tongue. That also gave me a lot of confidence to speak in public, and that helped me to shape my personality. I realized that I was different to the other seeds around me. The next step in planting plants is that they need water to grow. Water is what makes plants go out from the earth and see how the real world looks like. My love for reading and knowing about how things work out of my bubble took me to a discovery. During high school, in countries like New Zealand, you could choose subjects that you can drop. I hate math, so imagine myself in high school being like, oh, math? Yeah, no thanks. Back home, you needed to take every single subject. And your final grade was going to be an average of all of them. If you were good at everything but bad at math, for example, your whole grade, your whole score will drop down. I was convinced that I could change that, so every student had the same opportunity to highlight. But the only way to have a voice on education in my country was signing up on the Students' Association of Venezuela. And that's what I did. I signed it up into the association, and it was not until I was already there when I found out that all my problems and concerns about marking and all the system were smaller in comparison with the political agenda behind the Ministry of Education. I was required to go to conferences, and those conferences were like just about sitting down and listening how the ministry was saying that the president wanted to make some changes to the education curriculum. For example, subjects like English and world history were going to be eliminated because they were centered on the capitalist world. Math problems, for example, were going to be adapted to our new reality. Instead of being, Peter had 5 apples and he lost 2 on the way, how many apples does Peter have now? It will going to be something like, the United States made 100 people in our country lose their houses because of their capitalist ideology. How many houses do we have to build to reconstruct our non-capitalist nation? This event was like my water. It brought me out of the soil and into the real world and made me see how much wrong was going on out there. And let me tell you more. Nobody complained about those changes on the conferences. No teacher or student said a word because they thought they couldn't do anything about it. I was not going to let the government politicize education in my school. I didn't care if everybody was okay with it. I was not. I decided to go to schools giving talks about how to stop politicizing education and how the government was pushing dangerous ideologies on schools. I went to all types of schools, public schools, Catholic schools, schools where 14-year-old girls were pregnant, schools where students had guns in their backpacks. What happened next? During an event, the ministry needed to choose a president for the association. They asked participants to give a talk about how they would improve education in our country. After that, students from different schools will vote for a winner. I won. 96% of the people voted for me. However, because my talk was about not politicizing education, the organizer said, sorry, Ricardo can't be president of the organization because he doesn't meet the ideology requirements of the Ministry of Education. Thanks for participating. When I was expecting everybody to start shouting and complaining, nobody said a word. All of those students that I was fighting for, those students that I was trying to help, left me alone. I felt like a different plant again. But this time it was because the other plants didn't even care about their own soil. I couldn't live in a country like that. I made my decision. As soon as I finished high school, I needed to get out of Venezuela. Once they get all what they need out of the soil and water, plants go through the stage of survival. Now they have to face all the different challenges out of the ground. I talked to my parents about this place. They had everything, a powerful economy and beautiful landscapes. Furthermore, my uncle and my aunt were living there. So yes, I'm speaking about New Zealand. I'm sure you already know this, but I will just repeat it. New Zealand is far away, people. Really far away. Keep in mind that it takes around 13 hours to come here, at least from back home. However, I knew that New Zealand had more opportunities for me than Venezuela, and I was willing to accept any challenge rather than staying back home. I arrived here the 1st of September of 2018, being 17. I have to say that I was really excited to move here because I thought this was going to be my time to fit. I had been studying English for a while, so I was ready for anything. I thought I was not going to be a different plant anymore, and I was wrong again. Kia ora, mate, how's it going? I'm not too bad, eh? What about you? Looking forward for summer to put my tongs and my jandals on. It is bloody cold out there. Did I tell you that I lost my red chili bean? 30 seconds of conversation already made me want to go home. I called my uncle and I said to him, I can't understand anything they are saying. And he told me, don't worry, you will be all right. Just don't say anything bad about the All Blacks. Since that day, challenges began and they were everywhere. Something as basic as the language was a challenge. Have you ever thought that the words calf, dough, through, and Edinburgh end up in GH, but they are all pronounced differently? Even some sayings sound weird for me. It was raining one day, so I said, oh my God, it's raining oceans out there. And a friend said to me, sorry, do you mean it's raining cats and dogs? Yes, for sure, because that makes more sense that it's raining oceans, right? I had to be in front of the mirror practicing the phrase, good morning, sir. What can I get to you today? Because now I work in a restaurant and people sometimes look at me in a really weird way because they either don't understand me or because I ask them to repeat what they have said. But there are cultural differences as well. In New Zealand, you don't make friends in one day. If you ask a person that you just met in class for their number, they will probably walk away. I have to be careful with the sense of humor because it's not the same. Some topics are different and sensitive. Also, in Spanish we have 5 ways to say I love you. But here, if you say I love you to a girl on the first date, you will never see that girl ever again. Not only there were challenges in the difference of language and culture. For example, I couldn't get straight into university when I arrived here. The university couldn't make sure that my academic level was enough to get in, despite my average was 19.8 out of 20. I had to go to a college for 6 months and repeat my last year of high school. However, the college and all its teachers helped me out. They were offering a scholarship for a responsible, hard-working student that could demonstrate that they could highlight among others. Next challenge, I had to find a job. I sent a really poor CV to a busy kayaking place in Days Bay. I sent my CV on Sunday and I didn't get a reply that day. Neither the day after that, nor the day after that. So I decided to go in person and speak with the boss. I asked him if he received my CV, and he did, but he didn't reply. I told him that I wanted to work there. And despite not being a native English speaker or a kayak expert, he saw that I worked with enthusiasm and he hired me. But it didn't stick only with that job. I've been a dishwasher, a bartender, a waiter, a Spanish teacher, and a photographer. More challenges, getting a flat. After applying for 36 places and not being accepted, I came across with a couple on Facebook that was advertising an empty house in Karori that needed to be filled by 7 people in 2 weeks. First come, first served. And after a lot of afternoons wasted behind the phone, I did it. I found the people and I filled the house. Last challenge was not being afraid of expressing myself. You have no idea of how nervous I get about my accent because I know I have enough English level to communicate my ideas, but I don't want the person speaking with me to underestimate me just because I don't sound Kiwi. I made a video spot about COVID-19 for a contest organized by the New Zealand police, and I put so much effort on it. And guess what? I won, and the police put me on their social media. That video has 70,000 views right now, but at that moment I was so concerned that people would not like it because I was not Kiwi. Once I lived all those things is when I realized that I was a different plant here as well. But no matter where I was, I will always be a different plant. But here is the last stage of germination. Once the plant has survived to the challenges of the environment, the plant is officially an adapted plant. Here is my message for you. Find out what makes you different. You will be surprised of how every little thing makes you who you are right now. Your family, the way you were raised, the music you listen, your favorite movie, your mother language, even your name. The problem is that people have internalized so much that they need to be exactly the same as everybody else. But by doing this, their personalities vanish in the mob. If you raise your voice, people will look at you, and that's embarrassing. If you dress differently, people will judge you, and that's embarrassing. If you show your affection too fast, people will think you're desperate, and that's embarrassing. But who cares about what is embarrassing? Are you going to be scared of speaking in public just because you thought your friends were laughing at you in your high school presentation? Are you not going to share an idea just because you have to raise your voice? Are you not going to meet new people just because you're afraid of strangers? Are you really going to let people with dangerous ideas speak over you just because you don't want to be loud and create problems? Every single of you has something incredibly special that makes you different. You don't need to have a crazy family like mine, or speak a crazy language like mine, or being foreign to be special, but you need to open your mind and your heart to new things. All those events made me the plant I am right now. If I stopped reading because that girl called me a science teacher, I wouldn't know all what I know now, and I wouldn't have won the scholarship. If I wasn't upset because the situation in my country, I wouldn't be in New Zealand right now. If I was too embarrassed to ask my boss if he received my CV, I wouldn't have found a job. If I tried to hide my accent, I wouldn't have met the person that taught me how real love, how true love feels like. If I were embarrassed to speak in front of you just because I'm not New Zealander, I wouldn't be achieving one of my biggest dreams, which is giving a TED Talk. I haven't done anything out of this world. And here I am, giving a TED Talk, following my dreams, because I accepted that I will always be a cactus in a forest of pines. And it might be difficult to grow a cactus in New Zealand, but if you do it, it will be the most amazing cactus in the whole island. Thank you very much.
Bum 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 ba ta-da!